Good evening. This was the day that American warplanes unleashed a big attack against North Vietnam. It was called a protective reaction strike, but it was much larger than most of the raids which usually carry that name. We'll have a report from Washington on what the attacks might signify. And from Paris, we'll hear about the future of the Vietnam peace talks, which haven't attracted very much attention lately. Tonight, we also have film reports on how some American businesses have headed just south of the border to Mexico, on how one American city desperately needs a new jail, but the taxpayers won't put up the money for it, and how in another American city, mentally retarded boys are being helped by prison inmates. But first, Vietnam. A force of 350 American warplanes staged a series of raids on North Vietnam Sunday. It is now Monday in Vietnam, and the attacks are continuing around the clock. Radio Hanoi reports that 5 American jets have been shot down over North Vietnamese provinces bordering on Laos, and that some American pilots have been captured. But a spokesman for the U.S. command in Saigon says it has no knowledge of any American planes lost in the last 24 hours. The U.S. command is giving very few details about the raids, except to say that they are directed only at military targets and are being carried out to protect the diminishing numbers of Americans in South Vietnam. But informants say this may be the biggest series of attacks since the full-scale bombing halt in November 1968. They also say that the new attacks are aimed at crippling North Vietnam's anti-aircraft defenses and are partly in retaliation for the downing of 4 American planes last week.
The prospect is for more and bigger American airstrikes against North Vietnam. In some ways, this is not surprising. Every year at the beginning of the dry season, the North Vietnamese resume heavy infiltration along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. This brings in American air power to stop it. What is different this year is that Hanoi is challenging the U.S. planes. MiG aircraft are intercepting the raiders for the first time, and the North Vietnamese are moving in greater numbers of surface-to-air missiles as well as conventional anti-aircraft batteries. Saigon has been authorized to do whatever is necessary to counter the new defenses. That means there'll be a resumption of heavy bombing in North Vietnam, particularly against the MiG bases. The reasoning is to knock out the facilities, obviously, but also to force the North Vietnamese to disperse their aircraft defenses. Now they're concentrating them near the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Newer and bigger American bombing raids will take place just as soon as weather conditions permit. Well, the monsoon is over along the infiltration routes. The rainy season is just beginning in the Gulf of Tonkin and the northern provinces of South Vietnam. When the weather clears, there'll be an even greater intensification of the air war. Robert Goralski, NBC News at the Pentagon.
The Hotel Majestic is where the Vietnam Conference has gone on week after week for 43 months. But since early December, the Americans have canceled the meetings. Now both sides have agreed to start up again on December 30th. It's a question, however, whether the sessions will continue for very long in their familiar form. The North Vietnamese say the United States is considering breaking up the conference. According to them, the Americans believe this would allow them to intensify their air war against North Vietnam. North Vietnamese negotiators here insist the United States is banking on a massive air offensive to save the Saigon regime. William Porter, the chief U.S. negotiator, sees it differently. Officially, he canceled the recent meetings to allow the North Vietnamese what he termed time to develop a more constructive approach. This is a loud and clear hint he's waiting for them to come up with a new proposal. The last communist proposal is supposed to expire at the end of this month. The key clause demands total U.S. withdrawal by the end of 1971. But U.S. sources here say a new communist proposal must offer the possibility of a compromise. If it's just a bunch of non-negotiable demands, they say, it will suffer the same fate as the communists' earlier 10-point, 8-point, and 7-point plans. In that case, the Americans say there would be no point in continuing the ritual of weekly talks. Now that the war has declined as a major issue in the United States, American officials apparently feel there is no pressure on them to continue turning up here week after week, just for form's sake. Bernard Kaplan, NBC News, Paris.
In South Vietnam, both the Allies' 24-hour ceasefire and the Communist 72-hour truce have ended. Despite some violations, the U.S. command reports it was the quietest ceasefire period since the war began. There were no American casualties during the Allied truce. That's the first time that's ever happened. In Washington, Selective Service officials said it is virtually certain that no one, not one single person, will be drafted next month. And it's possible that fewer men may be called up in 1972 than in any year since the Korean War.
Some people have a deep, abiding respect for the natural beauty that was once this country. And some people don't. People start pollution. People can stop it. Write for Pollution Booklet, Box 1771, Radio City Station, New York.
3 officials in the Nixon administration have predicted better times ahead in 1972. Commerce Secretary Maurice Stans said President Nixon's economic policies have stopped inflation cold. He predicted a sharp drop in unemployment and a 6% increase in the gross national product. Labor Undersecretary Leonard Silberman was more cautious about unemployment, refusing, as he put it, to express a goal in terms of a simple number. Agriculture Secretary Earl Butz said farm income will go up by $1 billion and that the average farmer's earnings will go up by $500. The officials conceded, though, that the foreign trade outlook is uncertain. Some American firms have found that they can compete against foreign producers by moving at least part of their operations south of the border into Mexico.
Right across the border in Mexico, there's a lot of cheap labor, cheap and available. There's very high unemployment in Mexico, and Mexican men and women are eager for work. So many American companies are moving across the border to take advantage of this. Here's an example. This American company went out of the saxophone business 2 years ago because it could not compete with foreign competition. Then it got the idea of moving here to Mexico, opening this assembly plant in Nogales, where it could have cheap labor of its own. A Mexican worker gets 35 cents an hour here. In the States, a worker would get at least 5 times that much. So assembling a saxophone here is far cheaper. Once assembled, the horns are taken back across the border, and American workers polish them and test them and get them ready for sale. The way the laws are written, the company pays no duty when the saxophone parts are taken over to Mexico. When the completed instruments are brought back, the only duty is on the value added. And that expense is minor compared to the great savings in labor. Consequently, along the border today, you find dozens of American companies. Here in Nogales alone, there are 35, including some of the biggest names in U.S. industry, coming across the border for cheap labor. It is good for Mexico. 40,000 Mexicans have jobs because of it. The Mexican government naturally supports it wholeheartedly. And it is proving good also for towns on the U.S. side of the border.
Nogales has always been a good business town. We depended on our trade with Mexico, our winter vegetable seasons, tourists, cattle. But now we have this payroll that brings in, we think, roughly on Ambos Nogales, or both Nogaleses, around $9,700,000, which you can readily see what that would do to an economy that's already good.
Is there any estimate as to how much of that is spent on this side of the border?
Well, it's been said that approximately 75 to 80% drifts over to Nogales, Arizona.
The main objection to the runaway plans comes from American labor.
We view that the twin plant concept has Mexicans across the border working for what we call coolie labor, when the same type of work done here in America would at least be paid for at the rate of $1.60 an hour, the minimum wage. There's no doubt in my mind that there has been a loss of jobs here in America. Whether or not there has been any loss of jobs here in Arizona, I'm not sure.
Whatever objections American labor may have, though, more and more American companies are moving assembly plants to Mexico. With the cheap labor they can get here, they are able to meet foreign competition where otherwise they might not be. Jack Perkins, NBC News.
In talking about the economy, Labor Undersecretary Silberman called it outrageous that Congress has not passed legislation to stop strikes in the transportation industry. He was referring especially to strikes by railroad and dock workers. In New York City, where the contract with subway and bus workers expires on New Year's Eve, the tradition of last-minute negotiations is being played out. Today, the union members gave their negotiators the usual strike authorization.
Not so long ago, only the few could go down that long road to college. Now there's many more who must go through that door that opens on the future of our land. It's where the future is, it's where they go to grow. It's where horizons start, but there's one thing you should know. For colleges to stand, they need your helping hand. The time is now to help us build a future. The future's being shaped at college today, but tuition pays only 1/3 the cost of education in college. Help with the other 2/3. Join the future. Give to the college of your choice.
Prison officials in many parts of the country have warned repeatedly that overcrowded conditions in prisons are a constant source of uprisings. In Toledo, Ohio, there is an old county jail in such bad condition that the county has been told to do something about it. But that costs money, and the people who could put up the money won't.
No one knows exactly how old the Lucas County Jail in Toledo is. Closest estimate is 100 years. A federal judge has ruled that the jail is unfit to house prisoners and ordered the county commissioners and the sheriff to make improvements immediately. County officials say they don't have the money or the manpower to comply. They've been cited for contempt of court, and they face fines of $25 a day each until the jail is improved. The old jail has been overcrowded, sometimes as many as 275 prisoners at one time. Now the court has ruled that there should be no more than 150 prisoners detained there, 2 to a cell. The court also ordered improvements in the plumbing and in the lighting. It told the sheriff to abandon the use of the solitary confinement cells. County officials estimate all these changes could cost as much as $2 million. County officials admit that for the past 40 years, grand juries have been condemning the old jail. One of the attorneys who instituted the suit against the county said this jail is typical.
For the most part, county jails are an abomination. They're old, decrepit, and they're not the kind of institutions that people respond to willingly. That is, people don't like to pass taxes to build better jails. And as a result, they end up being terrible, terrible places.
Commissioner, how would you describe the jail?
Horrible. It is inhumane. There's no doubt about it. It's almost a dungeon, you might say. This is why the commissioners for many years have attempted to build a new structure.
In the meantime, before you get the new jail built, isn't there something that can be done about the present jail?
Not much, because you've got the structure. We will attempt to correct many of the problems we have over there. Again, it's money.
County officials say they've been trying to replace this old jail building, which was built right after the Civil War, but the voters have recently turned down a referendum which would finance the new structure. Lou Davis, NBC News, Toledo.
At a home for mentally retarded children in Salem, Oregon, the children, boys and girls, are cared for almost exclusively by women. To give the boys some male companionship, it was decided to let them hold their Cub Scout activities in prison, with prison inmates as their den fathers. The program has helped both the boys and the inmates.
These children in Cub Scout Pack 555 are going to their weekly Cub Scout meeting.
I'm going to have to leave the bus there for a minute.
Pack 555 holds its Cub Scout meetings in jail in the Oregon Correctional Institute near Salem. The Cub Scouts are children from Fairview Hospital, mentally retarded children who have spent most of their lives in institutions. The Den Fathers are prisoners who have volunteered to run Cub Scout meetings once a week. 2 years ago, Fairview officials tried to organize Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts for the retarded children, but no one would volunteer to be a scout leader. Then Fairview contacted the jail. Corrections officials liked the idea. They thought it would provide a matching of needs. The kids, they said, needed the attention. The prisoners needed to feel important. Today, prison officials say they are glad they tried the experiment. There have been no problems, and they are especially happy about the effect it has had on the prisoners.
Well, generally, we find that the rate of disciplinary incidents has dropped. Their use of medication lines has dropped. We find that they're giving of themselves without really thinking of any type of return. And actually, they're getting far more out of it than can really measure. The big rough tough cons respond to these youngsters quite well. When the youngsters come into the meeting place, there's a big show of affection. The youngsters come up, throw their arms around these fellas, and our fellas respond without any thought about it at all.
Keith Corhannon, 3 years robbery. Roy Bias, 2 years larceny. Ed Lopez, 6 years forgery. Roger Newman, 10 years manslaughter. Prison officials say homosexuals, sex criminals, and those convicted of serious crimes are not allowed to participate. Others, they say, avoid Cub Scouts because they don't want to lose their tough guy image. Still, there is a waiting list of inmates who want to be Den Fathers.
You get a feeling of helping someone else. They have a chance to change, and we take it for granted is what we do. But if we can help these kids out, it makes us feel a little bit better, makes our time go by faster. It just gives us a better spirit. And ever since this program's hit the institution, the whole institution's been in better spirits.
In 2 years, no inmate has dropped out of the program. And one who was released from jail even wants to come back for Cub Scout nights. John Stossel, KGW News at Oregon Correctional Institute.
In Philadelphia, 2 social scientists reported today that police efforts to stamp out heroin may be counterproductive. By making heroin scarce and more expensive, they said, police crackdowns drive addicts to commit more crimes to obtain their fixes.
I received this gift, the tie as a gift here, and, well, I'm afraid it just isn't me.
The salesman kept saying, he'll love it, he'll love it. He didn't.
An electric nutcracker. What person would give such a present?
Would you believe I already have 2 of these?
Like it? I don't even know what it is.
You can't please all of the people, all of the time. Now, maybe if you give U.S. savings bonds as gifts, you just might.
I'd like to return this duck.
Give U.S. savings bonds and please someone.
In today's professional football games, the Baltimore Colts defeated the Cleveland Browns 20-3, and the San Francisco 49ers beat the Washington Redskins 24-20. The hotel fire in Seoul, Korea has proved to be the worst hotel fire ever. The death toll has risen to 157, and it may be impossible to identify most of the victims, so great was the destruction caused by the flames and the heat. One American, identified only by his last name, Goodwin, is known dead. The worst previous hotel fire in Atlanta killed 119 people in 1946. Maurice Chevalier is gravely ill and sinking in a Paris hospital. Doctors say the 83-year-old entertainer can no longer be given emergency treatment with an artificial kidney. He entered the hospital 13 days ago with a failing kidney. Canadian Premier Pierre Trudeau and his wife became the parents of a 6-pound, 9-ounce boy Christmas night in Ottawa. Mother and child are in good health. And now, 4 NBC News correspondents look ahead to what we can expect in the coming week, the final week of 1971.
This week, merchants will total their Christmas sales. Preliminary estimates indicate business was up this year, about 10%. West Coast longshoremen and shippers will resume negotiations in San Francisco, and the federal mediator is optimistic. The 80-day Taft-Hartley injunction ran out yesterday, but union leaders agreed not to resume their strike before the 10th of January. New York Mayor John Lindsay is expected to announce that he will seek the Democratic presidential nomination. And James R. Hoffa, former president of the Teamsters, will check in for the first time with his parole officer on Monday in Detroit.
The president and the politicians are away for the holidays. Mr. Nixon, continuing his round of summitry, holds new meetings with West German Chancellor Willy Brandt at Key Biscayne, Florida. The week may produce a new challenge to Mr. Nixon in the New Hampshire presidential primary from conservative Congressman John Ashbrook of Ohio. Also, Indiana Senator Vance Hartke is expected to announce his entry into the Democratic primary in the same state. And in Baltimore, the bribery trial of Texas Congressman John Dowdy will go to the jury.
The new president of Italy, Giovanni Leone, takes office later in the week. The center-left coalition government here will resign, and Leone will have to appoint a new premier to form a new government. In Paris, after 3 weeks of postponements, the peace talks resume. And in Athens, Greek Prime Minister George Papadopoulos will address his people on New Year's Eve, outlining his plans for Greece in the coming year.
Normal activity throughout Japan will taper sharply this week as the nation enters its traditional week-long New Year's holiday. But top Japanese officials will be working hard, preparing Premier Sato's coming summit conference with President Nixon. In Vietnam, the war will resume after a Christmas truce. In Laos and Cambodia, where there's been no truce, fighting will continue. And in East Pakistan, Indian soldiers will find themselves more deeply engaged, fighting starvation, disease, and counter-atrocities.
I think the first time I was aware that I had cerebral palsy was the first time I was aware of myself. Today, when I do meet new people, people will look at the wheelchair first and sometimes not look back to see the person. Integration of the handicapped within society is very important. I have been one of the lucky ones, however, because a lot of handicapped people do not even get accepted intellectually or in any other way. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm happy. And as long as I can do the things I want to do, I have no problems accepting the world as it is or myself.
India's special envoy to Bangladesh said today that India and Indian soldiers will not be responsible for the safety or the well-being of non-Bengalis in the former East Pakistan. That, he said, is the job of the new Bangladesh government. The government has already denied food and supplies to some minority group members, but the Indian representative, D.P. Dar, said he's been assured that that's going to change. In the Middle East, an Israeli newspaper reported that Egyptian War Minister Mohammed Sadek is personally supervising large-scale military maneuvers now being held by the Egyptian army. News like this, on top of threats of war from Egyptian leaders, is being used to keep the Israelis on alert, both the civilians and the soldiers.
Sadat's warlike speeches, air raid drills, and practiced blackouts in Egypt are causing Israel to take a new hard look at its own civil defense preparations. The civil defense force here, called Haga, has never been tested by war because the Arabs were never able to attack Israeli cities in 1956 and 67. Now Haga is holding frequent practice drills in cities and towns throughout the country. Here in Herzliya, a Tel Aviv suburb, Haga men demonstrated what they would do if enemy planes attacked and bombed their town. The Israelis believe the Army and Air Force can handle any frontline Egyptian attack, But now they're trying to make certain the people at home will be able to weather possible Arab air raids. Until recently, the Israelis thought that Tel Aviv and other coastal cities were safe because the Sinai Canal front line is more than 200 miles away. Now they're not so sure. The Egyptians recently received Soviet T-16 bombers that are equipped with air-to-ground missiles that have a range of more than 100 miles. Israel has increased its watch against the surprise Egyptian aerial sweep across the Mediterranean, and there is a growing feeling by Israeli officials it could come soon. Cy Perlman, NBC News, Herzliya.
Israeli Premier Golda Meir today expressed her government's solidarity with imprisoned Soviet Jews, with the struggle to bring about their release and with their right to move to Israel to live. More than 10,000 Soviet Jews have emigrated to Israel this year, and many more would like to go.
Jewish dissatisfaction with life in the Soviet Union surfaces once a week in front of Moscow's main synagogue. This is where the latest stories are passed around. News of a relative on trial or a friend in a labor camp. Almost everyone outside the synagogue has applied for permission to leave the Soviet Union. Many have already received their exit visas and are waiting for the day to arrive. They talk about it openly. Although there are probably government agents in the crowd, Moscow's young Jews don't seem to care any longer. Inside the synagogue, the city's older Jews are devout and very orthodox. Although Jewish worship is permitted in the Soviet Union, there are many restrictions and hardships. There was no rabbi at this service. Moscow's chief and only rabbi died last month. Until a replacement is named, this city of 250,000 Jews is left without a single rabbi. The prayer books used at synagogue services are usually old. Some date to the last century. Prayer shawls are also scarce and are apt to be expensive. Most of these older Jews speak Yiddish among themselves, but their sons and daughters usually speak only Russian. Anti-Semitism is a crime in Russia, but many Jews say they feel discrimination. Newspaper articles criticizing Zionism and claiming an international Zionist conspiracy appear frequently in the government and party press. In spite of all these problems, a prayer to the government of the Soviet Union is displayed prominently in Moscow's main synagogue. Dissent is left to the younger people outside who are no longer afraid, who are pressuring to leave the Soviet Union and winning permission to leave in increasing numbers. Robert Hager, NBC News, reporting.
Good night for NBC News.
It's a beautiful night.
He's a tramp.
All your favorite Disney characters in a holiday delight. Tonight at 7:30, 6:30 Central Time.
The staff of WSM Television extends to you and your family best wishes for the most memorable holiday season ever, and special thanks for tuning in Channel 4, WSM TV Nashville.
Good evening, I'm Al Vex, and these are the headlines that set the scene at 6. Some predictions for 1972.
And the stage is set for next Sunday. I'm Roger Birch. We'll look at the playoffs again on the sports.
I'm Bob Olson with the weather. Christmas is seldom like this.
From WSM Television News, the communications center of the Central South, it's the scene at 6.
Come to either of the three stories that we had prepared to go on.